like there's some really bad relationship or marital advice going around recently, and I've even seen it on TV shows like Married at First Sight. And it's pretty much where these professionals keep telling people that they shouldn't talk to anybody outside of the marriage about marital problems. And this goes for relationships in general. And I think that is terrible and extremely unsafe advice. That's the exact sort of mentality that allowed women to get beat and abused in the past. And we all know that there's more than one way to abuse somebody. It's not always physical. A lot of times it's very mental. And we all know that love is blind. So we can trick ourselves into thinking that everything is hunky-dory. But here's the big reasons I feel that this is terrible advice. One is from experience. I will say that if you always tell, like when you have a frustration, you have to say it. You have to vent it, right? That's just good for your own mental health. Because if you bottle it up, that's how you start getting anxiety and depression and everything else, and extreme frustration and just, starting to hate your partner. So you have to say things that frustrate you to somebody. But if you always say things to your partner, and I can say this from personal experience with my partner, they start to feel attacked a lot of times. Like, nothing I ever do is good enough. Why do you complain all the time? And it can be really easy for us to complain about something and forget to compliment the things that, we appreciate our partner doing. And that's something really easy. That's something that almost everybody does. So if you start, bringing up all your issues constantly with your spouse, they can feel attacked and it can make them unhappy in the relationship. Another reason why I find it unsafe is because we, especially women, can be blinded by love, and we can not notice certain behavioral patterns in a relationship. Sometimes, we might be really frustrated, and it takes an outside view to say, don't you realize that your partner is alienating you? Don't you realize that your partner is mentally abusing you? Don't you realize this is bad behavior from your partner? So, if you have a partner who keeps belittling you, that is mental abuse. If all they do is belittle you, and they do it constantly, that is a form of abuse, and you have to be careful to not fall into that trap. And sometimes you don't notice that it's happening because partners can be so sly with it. But if you're not telling anybody else about it, it decreases your chances of recognizing that this is happening, because sometimes your friend or your family member who is outside the relationship, who's heard you say and complain about the same thing over and over and over again, especially for a few years, you'll say, this has been going on for years. You've tried to talk to him about it and nothing has changed. Why are you still in this relationship? Don't you realize that this is unhealthy for you? But two, this very much kind of is like, if your husband hit you, don't tell anybody about it. And I would love to say that that's an obvious exception, but I have never, ever, ever heard anybody give this advice of don't talk to people outside of your relationship about your problems in your relationship. I have never heard them throw in the disclaimer, except when you're being abused. So this does need to be said, because they're not putting in the disclaimer, they're not putting in the exception. So it is giving off the impression of, if your problems are so bad that your partner hit you, don't tell anybody about it, because it's only going to be that one moment and your family's going to remember forever, even if you work past it and get, through it and it never happens again. No. If your partner ever hits you, That's it. That's all it should be. Period. The end. Report that shit. And this advice, this relationship advice doesn't say don't do that. And it doesn't say, be careful about these things. It says don't talk to anybody. If you're having problems, you don't talk to anybody. You only talk to your spouse about the problems in your marriage. And that's just bullshit. You need to speak to other people in order to be safe, especially women. Because we don't always realize when our spouse has alienated us from our friends and our family. We don't always realize when our spouse has repetitive, dangerous behavior. How many times have women been stuck in abusive relationships for years, decades, their entire life, because they won't talk to anybody about it, because love is blind, because they make excuses? I think this advice of don't talk to anybody outside of your relationship about the problems in your relationship, because they'll always remember even if you work past it, is just total bullshit. I've had a lot of problems in my own relationship, and I think everybody has a lot of problems in their relationships. And I have talked to my friends and family about it, and sometimes they'll say, I think you're overreacting, or, this behavior has always happened, and if you're constantly unhappy, then, why are you still in this relationship? Are there times when he makes you happy? It's never come back to haunt me. Like, my parents have never been, well, do you remember that one time 7 years ago when you two got in that really big fight? No, they don't care, because they know, because they've been together for a long time, that you get in argument and you get pissed off and you need to go and bitch to somebody. And that's fine. And that happened that day. But then after that moment, it's done and over with. I don't believe in this advice, and I think it is extremely dangerous, especially for women. I think it enables abusive relationships.